At the Xenara Institute of Interstellar Diplomacy, a prestigious academy that trains the finest diplomats and strategists across star systems, a new student from Earth forced the academic council and all attending species to re-examine millennia-old prejudices. Her name is Rinvale, daughter of a renowned archaeologist and a fallen naval special ops officer. Yet few know she was secretly trained under the Final Peace Protocol, a covert program that raises humanitarian warriors to resolve conflicts beyond the bounds of law. In the classroom of Professor the Ryan Crux, a crystal and plasma-based being, Rin was openly condemned as a representative of a violent and regressive species. But with a single silent action, she made the galaxy pause and reconsider. What if those who carry a violent past are the only ones who truly understand the value of peace? The classroom at the Xenara Institute of Interstellar Diplomacy resembled no other academic space in the galaxy. A living crystal dome reflected the light of 3 artificial suns, making each step feel like walking through a cathedral of intellect. Seats were arranged according to atmospheric composition: hydrogen for flying species, liquid zones for aquatic beings, and a neutral pressure tier where Rin now stood, alone. 11 pairs of eyes, not all humanoid in form, fixed on her. Some cold and analytical, like examining an archaeological relic, others curious, and a few openly disdainful. At the front hovered Professor the Ryan Crux, a radiant crystal and plasma entity. His voice rang out like broken digital music, slicing through all known empathy frequencies. He didn't need volume; every word he spoke reverberated directly into the brainwaves of his audience. "Student Rinvale," the Ryan intoned, stretching each syllable like he was dissecting it. "Your kind has brought war to every world it has touched. Stand, and justify yourself." Whispers traveled across the atmospheric layers through color pulses, vibrations, and electromagnetic tones, all carrying the same weight: judgment. Rin didn't answer right away. She stood still. Her gaze never faltered, but she wasn't confrontational either. Only calm breathing, and eyes sharp as blades, an expression she once wore when negotiating with space raiders at Redix Station. Memories surfaced: her frail mother murdered during a gas raid, her adoptive father a special ops soldier who left her only 3 pieces of advice before his death. They don't need to know how strong you are. They need to see that you know when not to use that strength. But now, she had no choice but to use it, not for show, but to preserve the truth. Rin opened her bag and pulled out an ordinary-looking pen. Black. No logo. No glow. I'm not good at justifying. But I can illustrate. She pressed a button near the pen's tip. A microslim beam of energy fired, too fine to see. In 0.07 seconds, 3 humanoid dummies placed 20 meters apart were utterly obliterated. No fragments remained. Only thermal shockwaves lingered on the stone floor. The silence that followed exploded in intensity. A gaseous student glowed bright red, universal signal for shock overload. A mechanical life form quietly replayed the attack, and couldn't calculate the trajectory. Professor the Ryan said nothing. His luminous crystal nodes flickered erratically, signs of emotional signal conflict. Rin remained in place and said, "I didn't use this to harm anyone. But if today, I can protect myself with the truth, then the future of humanity in the Galactic Council won't exist." A water-based student named Tialana touched her crystal communicator, emitting a tone close to a whisper. Perhaps humans haven't failed to evolve. Maybe they took another path. One deeper. One more painful. Meanwhile, in the Level 7 control room, a mechanical eye recorded the entire lecture and transmitted it directly to Xenara's security command. One question repeated across encrypted lines. Who is Rinvale? And how does she know how to use a weapon from the Final Peace program outlawed for over 70 years? The monitor blinked off. But the story had only just begun. The tribunal chamber at the Xenara Institute did not resemble a court, it was more like a grand theater for galactic-level debates. 12 semicircular floating chairs hovered in mid-air, each representing one of the oldest and most powerful species in the Galactic Alliance. Below them stood the platform for the summon today. It was Rinvale. The light in the chamber did not come from lamps but from layers of plasma vapor, oscillating in sync with the emotions of the judges. The air felt thick, like it might rain, but rain made of accusations. At the center was Serenity Core, a non-corporeal intelligence from theoretical Planet 6, without a fixed form, existing as a swirling orb of light. Considered one of the oldest surviving minds in cosmic academia. Entity Rinvale, today you are not being judged for a crime. You are being judged as a potential threat. You represent humanity, a species not yet confirmed to be evolved enough for presence in this forum. In her mind, Rin replayed 100 teachings, rebuttals, diplomacy tactics, conflict escalation. But she knew, in this space, logic would not prevail over fear. And what these judges feared was not her but the uncontrollable. She took a deep breath. Back straight. Eyes fixed on the glowing form that accused her. I did not come here to ask for the right to exist. I came to remind you. If we are deemed unworthy, then perhaps your standards should be re-evaluated. A recording played footage from yesterday's class, Rin's use of a micro-weapon to eliminate target dummies. The council stirred literally. Some crystal entities cracked slightly. Gaseous beings changed color, unmistakable signs of subconscious distress. Serenity Core continued. You used tactical weaponry inside an academic institution. Do you understand what that means? Rin didn't bow her head. She replied. I do. It means I refuse to be a silent puppet to gain approval. I chose to demonstrate capability, not to intimidate, but to show. We are no longer your victims. Suddenly, a young delegate stood up, Ashanthrey, descendant of a civilization once unintentionally harmed by humanity during the old frontier wars. He activated a memory screen projecting a hidden historical log, a peace negotiation at Redix Outpost, where a mercenary force had planned to invade the Osman system. In the footage, a 17-year-old Rin used the same pen to prevent a massacre. Then, she successfully negotiated a military withdrawal using simulated psychological profiling of the attackers. The room fell into stunned silence. Serin asked only one question. Why didn't you present this footage from the beginning? Rin replied calmly. Because if a defensive act frightens you more than a peacekeeping success, then perhaps you are not truly seeking peace. The council split. One faction clung to dogma: violence can never be a tool of the evolved. The other, smaller group began asking, if someone deeply understands the horrors of war, might they not be the best protector of peace? A vote was held. Result: Rin was allowed to stay temporarily, under council supervision. As she left the chamber, Ishanthray walked beside her. No greeting. No gratitude. Only a quiet statement. For the first time, my fear didn't feel like prejudice. It felt like a lesson. The doors closed. But the real questions within the council remained unanswered. Not everyone who opposes you is your enemy. Sometimes, they are just someone who's never been heard. Right after the tribunal, the halls of the Xenara Institute buzzed with heated debate. On internal academic channels, thousands of discussion threads erupted simultaneously, each with one name leading them all, Rin Vale. But beneath the wave of discourse, a group wasn't debating, they were planning. Karel Othan, a final-year student of hive-mind parasitic origin, his body a colony of countless microscopic life forms operating in perfect synchronicity, encased in a shell as gray and cold as volcanic rock. Karel didn't speak through a mouth, his voice emanated from the air around him, carried by strange frequencies that made listeners feel cold and heavy. Karel's species had once been nearly eradicated in the Orion War, where a human fleet misreading hive-based tactics had unknowingly wiped out their entire ecosystem. Since then, Karel had held a singular belief. Humanity is the universe's mistake. One that must be corrected. He founded a student faction called the Disciples of the Old Order, a group that believed true peace could only come by eliminating disruptive elements like Rinvale. They began inciting fear, spreading manipulated footage, and quietly laying the groundwork to have her expelled, or worse. Meanwhile, Rin seemed completely unaware. She continued attending classes, taking notes, researching quietly, never commenting on politics. This infuriated Karel even more. She pretends to be harmless, but she's just a more carefully engineered weapon. Then came the incident. Late one night, in Laboratory Sector 7 where Karel was conducting bioresearch, a containment breach occurred. An artificially mutated organism, one specifically capable of dissolving hive mind constructs, was released. Internal lockdowns failed, disabled from within. Emergency evacuations were initiated. All students were safely evacuated, except Karel, who was trapped inside. While security systems struggled to reboot, a single figure broke quarantine, entering the biohazard zone with only a personal plasma filter. It was Rin. She found Karel as his hive began breaking down. Rather than leave, she used her device only designed for one person to generate a temporary safe zone. Then, carrying him herself, she ran toward the emergency decontamination corridor. Karel, half-conscious, no longer spoke in hive resonance. His voice was weak, singular, human-like. Why? Rin replied with a single sentence. Because no one deserves to die for a mistake they didn't make. After recovery, Karel learned the truth. The trap had not been set by Rin but by a fellow member of the Old Order, who planned to use his death to trigger her expulsion. His hive was damaged, but his unwavering belief in righteousness fractured more. He sought out Rin. No apology. No thanks. Just silence until finally, he asked, "Do you really believe peace can begin with forgiveness?" Rin looked him in the eye. "I believe it begins with truth. And the truth is, you didn't choose to be born into war. But you can choose not to drag anyone else into it." The quieter a place appears, the more screams it may be hiding. After the lab incident, Carrel publicly withdrew from the disciples of the Old Order. That single act made him a target quietly watched by a mysterious faction operating within the Academy. While tracing fake system access logs, Carrel stumbled upon a hidden signal embedded deep in the Academy's encrypted infrastructure far beyond what a student should be able to access. He reached out to Rin. "I want to know why that biolab malware existed, and who truly orchestrated it." Together with Rin, and two trusted allies, Tilana, a sentient aquatic being with ancient memory retention abilities, capable of encoding data within liquid molecules. Nerve, a machine learning entity who had their memory wiped for refusing to obey a kill command. The group began tracing the signal back through the biocontrol systems, cracking layer after layer of encryption using their unique multidimensional skills. It took nights of effort, and what they discovered was beyond belief. The Xenara Institute, revered as the pinnacle of galactic wisdom, was secretly the testing ground for a biotech weapons conglomerate. Worse still, they were developing Project Anima Exile, a conscious responsive weapon designed to erase political memory from entire species. The data revealed students from defiant races were often voluntarily transferred after undergoing internal interrogations. The entire lower level of the Academy was a psychological testing facility, designed to simulate and manipulate fear, loyalty, and despair to shape long-term behavior. One secret recording held a cold, detached voice. "Training peace is inefficient. Installing submission is more cost-effective." Even Tilana, the gentlest of the group, broke down. Sitting by the lake in a wordless moment, she finally said, "I once believed peace was instinct. But maybe it's just an illusion created by those in power." Rin placed a hand on her shoulder, eyes fixed on the glowing towers of the Academy. "Peace isn't fake. We've just handed it to the wrong people." The group agreed. They had to infiltrate the restricted sector, home to the Anima Core, the core of the memory suppression weapon. But to access it, they needed a living biometric key lock that only a high-ranking member could open. No one in their team had that clearance. The only one close enough to the council was Professor the Ryan Crux, the very being who had humiliated Rin on her first day. Looking into his frosted crystal-paneled office, Rin whispered, "To bring down a system, sometimes you have to walk into its heart." Orthius 9 station, a floating citadel between interstellar trade routes, was hosting the 72nd Galactic Convergence. Suspended in vacuum and protected by hundreds of crystalline shield layers and neural dampeners, the station glittered like a star of judgment. There, 32 species representatives were preparing to vote on a proposal titled, "Reclassify Earth as a semi-civilized species, restrict access, ban tech sharing, and cut interstellar privileges." In a hall resembling a cosmic opera house, all eyes turned toward the center dais, where Serin Decor, council leader, was solemnly declaring, "Earth's blood-soaked history proves one thing. They are not evolved enough to coexist in peace." A soft pulse like an electric breath rippled through the room. Lights flickered. A figure stepped from the blind spot of the station's neural surveillance grid. Rin Vale. "I am not here to defend," she spoke clearly. "I am here to invite you to feel." Security guards surged forward, but they never reached her. Tilana, in her pure liquid form, had already seeped into the environmental system and activated the Anima Bridge, a device capable of synchronizing living memories across minds. No words. No arguments. Just memory. All council members, from floating beings, gas-based intellects, to crystalline cubes, were drawn into a shared field. Evrak's War, 2193, a memory Rin carried like a scar. They saw through her eyes, heard the screams, smelled the scorched flesh, felt the wrenching dread, and above all, they experienced the death of a non-human child caught between crossfire, both sides in the right. Some delegates broke down from the overwhelming emotions. A gaseous theologian sobbed uncontrollably. A silicon-based intelligence cooled its circuits, its version of grief. The memory ended with one image. Rin, kneeling in the rubble, arms wrapped around the lifeless child, weapon discarded. We did not evolve for war. We went to war to survive. And from that, we learned to hate the violence inside us. Seren Decor tried to regain control. Emotion is not the metric for evolution. Rationality and technology are. Rin replied, calm and firm. Without emotion, reason becomes a weapon. We learned restraint not through policy but through pain. She held up the anima core, not with human memories, but those of the very council species warfare they had buried or erased. This is the part you forgot, or chose to forget. A long silence. Then, voting commenced. For the first time in history, the result was 29 in favor, 3 against. Earth retained full interstellar membership. The 3 opposing voices stayed quiet. Some delegates suggested new criteria for civilization, ones that included ethics, empathy, and conflict resolution. As she exited the station, Rin turned to look back at the place that had witnessed Earth's first galactic victory, not through might, but through pain, truth, and shared memory. Karel appeared, handing her the official Xenara student emblem. He smiled a real smile, for the first time in this saga. You didn't just win. You made the entire galaxy remember who they used to be. Not everyone who knows how to fight chooses to. But those who choose peace when they have the power to destroy are the strongest of all. News of Rin Vale's memory synchronization speech spread rapidly across allied planets. It wasn't just controversial, it triggered a galaxy-wide reassessment of interstellar education philosophies. At Xenara, Professor Therian Crux sat alone in the grand lecture hall. The crystals on his body glowed dimly as sign of deep emotional disturbance in the Crystarian species. He replayed the footage from the summit, pausing on the image of Rin cradling the child in memory, saying nothing, asking for no pardon. I taught evolution, and forgot that its greatest trait is the ability to relearn. The next day, he resigned and nominated Rin as Interstellar Strategic Advisor. No student had ever held such a position. Karel, now free from his extremist past, joined Rin in designing a new curriculum titled Proactive Peace, a philosophy of preventing war through total preparedness. Tilana was appointed the first aquatic delegate in a newly formed Emotional Ethics Council tasked with weaving empathy and morality into universal policies. Nerv, the learning AI, became the ethical technology overseer, ensuring that no civilization used weapons without understanding their full consequences. Months later, on the floating forest moon of Lyra, Rin stood before a class of over 30 students from species once considered enemies. She wore no armor, carried no weapons, only a classic leather-bound pen, and a wooden board, a gift from Karel, crafted from the hull of a fallen starship. She opened the lesson. You're not here to learn how to fight. You're here to learn when not to. The room was still. One student, an ethereal being of gaseous thought, asked softly, "Are you still afraid?" Rin smiled for the first time in this entire journey. "Yes. But I don't have to pretend not to be anymore." At the heart of Xenara, a new statue was unveiled. A woman raising a pen. Behind her, the shadow of a broken sword. Etched at the base. Evolution is not in strength but in how we choose to use it. Rin Vale, keeper of warm memories, guardian of peace. Not a triumphant end, but an awakening. And in a galaxy full of hidden conflict, a small light from the human heart was enough to make the stars listen.